moving on to our first topic. This week we are discussing going over the crane previews. We were given a big article with some pretty much a good majority, I think, at this point of the card base, and they were discussing for crane, and they were discussing the three primary sort of mechanic focuses, which are sort of one is revolving around honor, another around dueling, and another one around their sort of station, their position in the society, right?
Yeah.
And so starting with the honor mechanic, they give us a couple cards, most notably Wave the Crane, which is their philosophy card, kind of their linchpin card here. And just to go over that real quick, what that is, it's a zero cost event, philosophy, action, choose a crane character you control, honor that character. And this is tying in with this entire theme that they're kind of setting up, where the crane want to honor their people. So, what did you think about this entire section, this kind of theme of honoring guys, Ginger?
So it's Crane. Crane honor their guys. They've always honored their guys. They've always been big on honor. This is. I did not feel like I was surprised in any way. I was saying earlier that if you gave me all these cards and there was no symbols on it, there was no colors on it, if there was nothing on it to denote where it came from, I would look at these cards and go, these are going in a Crane deck.
Yeah,
There's no way around it.
yeah.
They did a good job of giving us Crane cards.
hmm
I think they started with the Crane. The Crane is probably the easiest one to just put out there and say, this is obviously Crane.
Well, I think that's also kind of the testament to the honor mechanic that they're giving out here. Is that it's a very passive mechanic, right? That kind of triggers. So they have this card, which is going to be a staple in Crane decks for sure, for at least a year or two, if not for the duration of the game. And they'll be able to play that, honor their guys, which will contribute a military or political bonus, because when you honor a guy, they get their glory attribute added to their military skill or political skill, right? And it also allows them, when that character is discarded, to gain an honor. So there's this kind of like sort of a gateway drug mechanic, I would say. It's very easy to get into playing them, because they kind of play themselves, right? Just by playing this one card, in the most obvious way, and
Yeah.
doing what the crane do, then you kind of set up this board position, where you're
Well,
advancing your win condition, as it were.
what they've done is they've taken an honor victory, a political victory,
hmm
and they've taken it out of the realms of the experienced player's hands. A new player can build a Crane deck and build an honor deck now, based on the cards that I've seen and the way I've seen them worked.
hmm
It no longer looks like quote unquote the advanced setting of the game.
Yeah, yeah. So it's more accessible, I think, is what you want to say, because I think there will be a
Yeah.
complexity to it,
Oh, no
especially
doubt.
when you're playing
There has
against,
to be.
yeah, especially when you're like playing against like somebody like Scorpion, for instance, who's trying to actively, and has card effects that actively counter yours, right? So,
Yeah,
um,
I'm really looking forward to a good honor versus dishonor game with this new card sets. I
that's yeah. Go ahead.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm. That's the one big, I think, more than any other question in as far as mechanically oriented with the L5R that I had, was how they're going to resolve honor versus dishonor. Because as you know, right, honor versus dishonor in the old game always ended up in a stalemate, right? Almost, unless one player just got God draw and the other one got nothing, right? I remember going to
The
good.
I used to play Yasuki Dishonor
hmm
back in Emperor, and there was a gentleman up in Fairbanks, Alaska, where I was living, who played Crane Honor.
Yeah.
And I hope one day he hears this episode, because it was the greatest game I've ever played. It lasted 3 hours.
Oh my God.
3 hours until he finally etched that last point of honor on me.
It was
And
glorious.
it
It
was
was
a
glorious.
glorious, crazy game. I think we both pretty much decked out. It was
Yeah.
a terrible, 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 just I mean terrible in the worst possible way.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it took forever. But the game was intense. It was emotional. And at the end of it, we both shook hands and walked away as friends and played again next week with just different decks.
Yeah, like there was something to be said about that, right? I definitely had a game where I was playing a passive defensive dishonor in the old game, and a scorpion, right? And the my opponent was playing an honor runner, right, with a military bent. So there was a lot of counterplaying going back and forth. But one thing that I always stuck in my mind was whenever I went to tournaments, right, and I would just tell this to new players, right, when they came into the game, like, look, if you're taking an honor deck to a tournament, bring a die 10 with you because at the end of that round you're gonna roll a die. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's the way tie breaks were solved in tournaments, or at least when I was going actively this last time around. So I'm really glad that they actually made this honor mechanic sort of a passive thing, but also conditional in a lot of ways, right? So we see a lot of we have a card here that actively let's see here, let me pull it out, Kikita Asami, right? Who actively takes honor from you. She's a 3 fate cost unique Kikita Asami, 1 military strength, 3 political strength, 2 glory. She has a courtier trait, and she has an action that says, while the courtier is performing a political conflict, if you count more than your current political skill and the conflict of your opponent, take 1 honor from your opponent. Right? So this is like a conditional effect. They have to be engaging with you, interacting with you, and not just in a defensive way, but strictly in a political conflict. So I really have the feeling that they're going to go out and want to get those engage with you and interact with you a little bit more than the old one was, and they'll be able to, by doing that, have gain momentum. Where in the old rule set you weren't able to. You would just stalemate out because I'd gain honor, you lose honor. I'd gain honor, you lose honor. Somebody will win.
Well, it used to be that this is the way we described it, at least,
Hmm.
especially in those long political games, where your fate phase
Hmm.
was your battle phase for political decks, and now that they've condensed all the combat into one phase, now it's no longer core tier fighting against. It's no longer my half of the board fighting against your half of the board. I'm not going after individual characters anymore. I'm not
Hmm.
going after you. I am sending my courtiers in a fashion as a courtier after your province in the
Hmm.
battle section of the game. Honor is no longer trying to how do I put this?
Solitaire.
Honor is now. Well, I mean, there's the solitaire I think a solitaire deck is going to be harder because you're forced to interact with your opponent if you want the honor. You can't just interact with yourself,
Hmm.
which I'm a big fan of because now my opponent must deal with me as opposed to just ignoring me as he did his honor run.
Hmm.
But I'm trying to put my thought here into word, and unfortunately, I'm having a hard time doing that. Long day at work. Go figure.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so what you're looking at now, which I'm a big fan of, is honor is no longer the point of the political game.
Yeah.
The point of the political game is still the destruction of province, just like a military deck.
Yeah.
Honor is now the tool as opposed to the point.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be card effects that enable buffs on your guys. Honoring itself is a buff. Like like I was explaining, it gives you a bonus to your political skill and military skill, right?
Yeah.
So like honoring allows you to gain momentum and put advantage over your opponents because you are able to create this condition in which other effects are enabled,
Mm-hmm.
that you can kill personalities, bow them, whatever. if your guys
Yeah.
are honored. And there's other cards that they've previewed in this article that make that more uh, relevant, right? So, for instance, Asahina Storyteller, right? It's a 4 fate cost, 2 military skill, 4 political skill, Courtier Shikenja air trait, and he has 2 glory skill. Sincerity, keyword, which has the ability when this character leaves play, draw 1 card. And his ability is each honored Crane character you control gains sincerity. So just by having honor, you're enabling this card advantage for yourself. So every time a personality leaves play, if I'm playing Phoenix and I'm using those fire actions to remove your guys or whatever they may get, right?
Yeah.
Um, then you're drawing
Which of
cards.
course,
Mhm.
and that negates the lack of cards you're going to have in your hand because of the honor wheel.
Yeah, it's yeah, because you're not drawing as many cards. It gives you advantage. So do you want to give a Crane advantage? Right, by for forward, do you want to give them honor by removing a guy? Do you want to give them a card because they're removing a guy? Because they're going to play the honor their guy, and they're getting this force pump, and they're going to be able to play also these other cards that have been spoiled for us. That allow them to like remove people and do things, right? Um, how do you feel about how it's like blended in with the entire theme of the Crane, like as far as the being honorable? Do you think that fits appropriately, like the
Oh
way?
yeah, yeah. They did a really good job of designing these cards for the theme of the clan.
Hmm.
I'm actually really impressed with what they did.
Hmm.
Um, a couple gripes here and there, but nothing I could really say. No, no, nothing specific. Just a few little odds and ends where I don't like the way. Nothing specific I could name. Generally
Yeah,
speaking, I'm really, really happy with it. I'm probably never going to play it.
yeah, yeah.
I can't play the crane.
Hmm.
I have self-respect.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. Um, but I
I.
will say, looking at the way the themes are working out,
Hmm.
I in my head I could build a solitaire deck.
You think? You think that that's the solitaire
I
still
you
gonna be a
know
thing?
I could, because you bring the guys out, you use your own cards to honor them, and
Hmm.
as those cards leave play at the end of the turn, because you're not putting any extra fate tokens on them, because you only want them in play to honor them and have them go away,
Yeah.
gaining their honor, and then you got just a couple duelists in play to protect your provinces. People attack, the
Hmm.
duelist is out, the duelist does the duel action where everybody goes home but the two people in the duel, and then even if the duelist loses, your
Hmm.
opponent doesn't have enough force to take the province anymore because of other card effects in play.
Hmm.
Now you've got other cards in your deck that we've seen, the final stand, stuff like that. They're very good at, from the cards I've seen, defending their province with very few people, allowing you to take your other personalities, honor them, shuffle them out of play as quickly as possible, gain that honor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could do solitaire. You could still do solitaire. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, you're flooding the board with basically guys, cheap bodies to have them just be removed at the end of the
Yeah,
turn to gain honor, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to say. Like, I wonder, like how, because obviously we haven't seen the entire card pool yet. Whether or not that actually will be, because it seems like the most. Now that you mention it, like it seems like the most obvious way to gain that the benefit of that honor, that one honor you're gaining from the honored personality. So. I wonder if like how that will shake out in the end, whether or not that
What
will
is it,
be a
20,
thing.
20 now to win honor? On honor
25,
victory?
25,
25?
yeah, and you win instantly.
25?
You win.
25 doesn't sound that hard to get to with that strategy.
Well, my counter to that is that there's game mechanics. There's in the core mechanics. There's a way to cause honor loss, and not only that, but dishonor people. So there's
Yeah,
agency
but
to counter their tactics there that you have without before you add in any extra card effects like meta cards that you may be teching against Crane matchups or that sort of thing, right?
yeah, but just like before with the honor versus dishonor, if you were
Hmm.
doing that, then your opponent needs to have a dishonor deck. you might have a couple things here and there in your average deck. Some people might slip a couple Dishonor cards in there just to keep their deck balanced. But if a Crane player really sits down and builds themselves an Honor Solitaire deck in the new system, you're going to need a dedicated Dishonor deck to stop them.
Or you're going to need to swing into them hard with military.
Or swing in hard with military.
Or not military, but like be aggressive, like what I'm saying.
Be incredibly aggressive. But even then, if I'm reading a lot of those duelist cards I saw right, it doesn't matter. I can just